When we read the Catechism of the Catholic Church, it is very ambiguous. There we understand anger becomes sinful when it deliberately desires harm, or seeks revenge rather than justice, or hardens into hatred or contempt. In the Catechism numbers 2302, 2303, 1866, 1869, this concept is very well explained, which you can read for yourself. St. Augustine offers a very vivid image. Anger, according to him, is a spark. Extinguished quickly, it gives light and warmth. Fed and nourished, it becomes the fire that consumes the house. The sin is not in the spark, but in the refusal to put it out. Sinful anger has its distinct spiritual smell. It lingers. It rehearses conversations. It keeps account. It seeks allies. I often say to people, when you argue with your partner about a particular issue, argue only about that particular issue. Often, in anger, to win arguments, we go to past hurts and future possibilities, which makes you carry with you anger. When you argue, please argue about that particular issue. The St. John Chrysostom warns that anger, once allowed to dwell, becomes a tyrant over the soul, commanding words and action long after the original offense has passed. In this regard, St. Gregory the Great adds that anger blinds our judgment, distorting perception and rewriting narratives until truth becomes a tool of the ego rather than a path to communion. From a therapeutic perspective, this corresponds to rumination. Anger loops endlessly, feeding self-righteousness and rehearsing injury. The soul grows tired. Spiritual growth halts. St. Francis de Sales here speaks with a singular pastoral realism about anger, precisely because he knew it from within. In his young age, naturally inclined to a quick and fiery temper, he subjected himself to a lifelong discipline of gentleness, not by denial, but by vigilant mastery. He famously counseled in his introduction to devout life, nothing so much soothe anger as silence, insisting that the first victory over anger is restraint, not retaliation. St. Francis warns that anger often disguises itself as zeal while secretly serving pride. He says, true zeal, he explains, is gentle. It is patient and persevering because it flows from charity rather than self-assertion. False zeal is noisy, harsh, and impatient with the weakness of others. It corrects, but it does not heal. St. Francis de Sales himself practiced this teaching very concretely. When gravely insulted or contradicted, he deliberately softened his voice, moderated his posture, and delayed his response until interior peace returned. He believed that one act of meekness was worth more than many words spoken with the heat of anger. He understood that anger governed by ego leaves only wounds. A central moral confusion that we need to address today is that many believe that speaking the truth excuses anger. The church teaches us the opposite. Truth must always be spoken, but never at the expense of charity. Paul explains to Ephesians in chapter 4, verse 15, speaking the truth in love, we are to grow up in every way into Him who is the head, Christ. Truth spoken in anger often fails its own purpose. It hardens hearts, humiliates rather than heals, and seeks victory rather than conversion. St. Gregory the Great compares moral correctness correction to surgery. Surgery is painful, but it is precise, calm, and ordered toward healing. A surgeon who cuts in rage does not heal, he mutilates. Likewise, correction delivered in anger, even when factually accurate, often fails morally. Truth must serve communion, not your ego. In the Christian life, anger is not merely managed, it is converted. Anger reveals what we love and where we remain unhealed. It exposes wounded pride, fear, attachment, and unmet expectations. Grace does not bypass this realism. It enters them, and the saints are very unanimous about that. Anger must be brought into prayer before it is brought into speech or action. The Psalms model this spiritual honesty. They do not censor anger, they consecrate. Anger spoken to God is purified. Anger acted upon without reflection becomes a sin. Saint Teresa of Avila compares the soul to a garden. Passions are like wild growth. If neglected, they choke virtue. If tended patiently, they bear fruit. Self-mastery is not instantaneous. It is learned through humility, discipline, and a repeated surrender. From a therapeutic point of view, naming anger reduces its power. Reflection restores agency. Silence, prayer, fasting, and self-examination of conscience restrain both the soul and our nervous system. The contemporary Catholic psychology deepened this insight by attending to the role of nervous system and early attachment in the experience of anger. Anger is often intensified when the body remains in a state of perceived threat. Past wounds, unresolved traumas, or chronic stress can prime the person to react rather than reason, or give the person time to reflect. This does not remove the person's moral responsibility, but clarifies the work required for healing.